The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.
The energy sector has the power to transform our way of life. And as our population continues to grow, so does the demand for energy. While this can be an opportunity for energy suppliers, it represents a host of challenges, one of the most significant being the impact on the environment. Thus, we must find ways to provide cleaner and more efficient energy and products. This is Business First.
Business and technology issues. Best-in-class solutions. Television for decision makers. Business First.
Welcome to Business First. I'm Jack Kemp. With me for this segment are 2 executives from companies that are focused on the issue of how to help meet the nation's demand for energy. Dennis Jacobson is President and CEO of Rentech Inc., a developer and licensor of a patented and proprietary gas-to-liquid, or GTL, process that converts natural gases into high-value, clean-burning fuel. Ralph Dallabetta is the Chief Technology Officer and Vice President of Technology for Catalytica Energy Systems of Mountain View, California. This company has developed and is fielding breakthrough pollution prevention technology for gas-fired turbines. Joining us as our industry expert for this discussion is Kevin Heslin, editor for Energy User News. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Jack.
Kevin, start us off by telling us briefly what the premise of gas-to-liquids is.
Jack, you'd have to ask an engineer to explain the process, but what people need to know is that gas-to-liquid technology makes clean-burning diesel fuel from all sorts of dirty-burning gases, including syngas, natural gas, coal, and industrial gases. The diesel can be burned in vehicles, it can be burned in generators, it can be burned in all sorts of applications where diesel appears everywhere now. GTL can also be used as a way to transport the energy from natural gas over long distances where no gas pipelines exist.
Let's hear what Dennis has to say about this. Dennis, first of all, tell us a little bit more about Rentech and how you got involved in gas-to-liquid technology.
Yes, Jack. Rentech was formed in 1981, and it was based on the technology that had been worked on by 2 of our founders, Dr. Charles Benham and Dr. Mark Bond, when they were working for the Solar Energy Research Institute. We initially started talking about looking at the conversion of agricultural waste to the clean-burning diesel fuel that Kevin mentioned. We then started looking at natural gas, and lately we've been focusing on the conversion of coal, working together with Texaco for the past 4 years. Rentech is a small publicly traded company on the Amex exchange.
Well, Dennis, what are some of the differences between Rentech technology and that of others in the industry, and why are these differences so important to us?
Well, I think the most important difference was when Rentech started its trail of developing its GTL technology, we took a different approach than some of the major companies. We looked for smaller scale projects, mainly ones ranging from 2,000 to 20,000 barrels a day. For that, you had to have a low capital cost and a very flexible system. You had to have high online performance. And so what we concentrated on was an iron catalyst, which is a very low-cost catalyst, but very flexible. It can convert natural gas, as Kevin mentioned, but we can also look at refinery bottoms, which are now becoming a domestic problem because utilities which used to burn them no longer want to do so. We're focusing on coal. And all of that can fall into what we do. We've also looked at a slurry reactor, which is a cheap way of this key conversion step of the synthesis gas, the carbon monoxide and hydrogen conversion. Those together give a very effective performance. And also we avoided patent thickets. A lot of majors are out there, major oil companies such as Shell and ExxonMobil, developing this technology. They're looking for much larger projects, but their goal is also to protect their technology. They do a lot of work with patents. And what we try to do is stick with something that's tried and true and don't run into those types of issues.
Right. Kevin, you have a question?
Dennis, I'm concerned. What are the overall implications of employing GTL technology?
I think it's a win-win situation, Kevin. What we have when we deploy the technology is taking, as you mentioned, wasted resources, such as flared natural gas. We're flaring approximately 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year. We could convert that into 1 million barrels of clean-burning diesel fuel. And it's done in an environmentally friendly manner. Coal, I think, is now going to become very important in our national energy picture. We've developed advanced clean coal technologies that, when combined with GTL, can have a highly efficient, in other words, we can have plants that are 65% thermally efficient. Conventional coal is 30 to 35% efficient. Fluidized coal is somewhere around 40 to 45% efficient, but this is 65% efficiency. This is a great improvement. The coal reserves are vast in the United States, and you've really got to look at the whole energy picture. I mean, there is no one answer, but GTL, I think, can play a very important role. And our technology is ideally suited for combination of synthesis gas from coal.
How would GTL development impact oil pricing and our energy security?
That's a very, very good question. I think that's the most important question. As far as pricing, I'm not sure the impact would be very great, Jack. I think what we've seen is, in the past at least, OPEC has responded to threats of the alternative sources. We go back to when you were in Congress and oil shale came, all of a sudden oil prices came down, rendering oil shale non-competitive. We looked at doing the energy picture up at Beulah in South Dakota, the plant up there, which is synthetic natural gas from lignite, and that was a one-off because of, again, the prices came down. But now demand is picking up dramatically, and I think we're looking at significant increases in domestic requirements, and I think what we're looking at is the fact that we need another source of energy. We're currently, the refineries, just kind of looking at it in an overall picture, refineries are full out. We're producing, using approximately 20 million barrels a day of liquids, and about 55% of that is imported. By the year 2020, we're expected to go to about 26 million barrels a day. We can't, and everyone says, well, we'll just import more crude. Well, that doesn't work. We're full out on our refineries, so we have to start importing refined products. They're not cheap. Our deficit spending, our foreign deficit will go up dramatically. We've got to do something about that. Turning to natural gas, for example, which is on everybody's mind as a result of the California issue and picture that we saw this last year. There was a recent article of interest in the New York Times where they talked about by 2015, we're going to need about 45% more gas than we're currently producing. In the last 18 months, we've doubled our drilling. We've increased production by 2%, but use went up by 3%. So it's a losing battle.
Dennis, thank you so much.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful. Kevin, help us understand what NOx is and the impact of excessive NOx on the emissions.
Hey, Jack, NOx is one of the greenhouse gases said to contribute to global warming. It also contributes to acid rain. There's a whole range of human activities, though, that lead us to increased production of these greenhouse gases, including burning fuel for energy. High NOx is very likely, therefore, to be associated with high CO2 levels.
Ralph, let me turn to you. As I understand it, there are two significant issues driving the need for newly constructed power plants that will be built in America with natural gas-fired turbines. What are the factors, and how does Catalytica fit into this market?
Well, there are two major dynamics that are occurring today. One is the increased requirement for power generation capacity. This is essentially necessary to address the imbalance between supply and demand that's occurring throughout the U.S. today. The second major dynamic is the reduction in emissions according to the regulations. Catalytica is developing technology that essentially will address this need for low-cost and ultra-low emissions power generation technology. The system that we are developing is called the Zonon cool combustion system. It's essentially a combustion system that replaces the conventional combustor in a gas turbine engine.
So, Ralph, this is what differentiates Catalytica from existing technologies. Can you explain further?
Yes, Jack. What Catalytica has developed is a technology that essentially integrates into the gas turbine. It is a new combustion system that replaces the existing combustion system in a gas turbine. This new combustion system, in effect, chemically burns the fuel to produce the power required by the gas turbine. Existing combustors, using a flame in their combustor, produce high levels of NOx. By using this chemical combustion process, we essentially eliminate the formation of NOx. What this does is give you a cost-effective, ultra-low emissions technology that's applicable to a broad range of gas turbine engines. The Zonon combustion system is a pollution prevention technology, and I think that's an important differentiation to understand. We do not clean up the NOx after it's been formed in the engine. We actually prevent its formation in the first place. Now, if we compare this with the alternative cleanup technology is expensive, high capital and high operating cost. Because it's added on to the turbine, it increases the overall footprint, the space required for the gas turbine, and it requires hazardous and toxic chemicals. Zonon is differentiated in every one of these points. It does not require a larger footprint. It has lower capital and operating cost, and it does not require toxic or hazardous chemicals.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's really a fascinating discussion. When we continue, alternative energy resources. We'll be right back. Not only are energy providers challenged with how to meet energy consumption demands, they must do it cost effectively while adhering to stringent environmental laws. Welcome back. Joining me now are executives from two important companies in this whole area that are helping the United States meet our energy requirements with an emphasis on both cost control as well as pollution prevention. Curtis Ranger is president of DTE Biomass Energy, a company that develops, owns, and operates landfill gas to energy conversion systems. David Wilkie, president of Hess Microgen, a company that provides a means of reducing business operational costs through its packaged cogeneration systems. Kevin, this is kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Can abundant fuel supplies exist while maintaining a cleaner environment?
At present, Jack, we rely heavily on fossil fuels, but also on nuclear, hydro, geothermal. In the future, we may rely on sea turbines and wind turbines, and after that, solar and hydrogen. What we need to do is we need to work through the economic and infrastructure problems blocking us from adopting some of these energy-efficient and environmentally friendly solutions.
Well, thank you, Kevin. You know, the subject of landfills is a complex issue in and of itself. There's been a big debate on the issues, including how to cut down on landfill gas. However, it seems to me that this argument has been transcended by the question of just how to best use landfill gas as a viable source of new energy. So first of all, Kurt, try to start off by explaining what exactly landfill gas is.
Sure, Jack. Landfill gas is formed in covered landfills as organic materials decompose. Having lived in upstate New York, you may have seen gas bubbles coming up out of a swamp, or even been near a belching farm animal, a cow, in the dairy land in New York. Well, the anaerobic bacteria that live in a landfill, I call them my bugs in the trash, actually consume the products that we throw into the refuse, the hamburger wrappings, the materials that we toss away. Well, that's food for this bacteria, and in digesting that food they create a gas, and that's methane and carbon dioxide. The methane gas is a valuable and grossly underutilized energy resource.
How is it recovered?
At landfills we drill wells, and these wells are much like water wells. They're plastic pipe, they're perforated at the bottom. They're spaced about 1 acre apart in the landfills, and we connect all, and they're about 60 to 120 feet deep into the landfill. Each of these wells are hooked up into a collection header system of pipes and then connected to a blower. And this blower pulls a vacuum on the landfill. So what that does is it draws the gas into the collection system rather than allowing it to escape into the environment. And from the blower, we deliver it either to a flare where it's burned, or we send it to a beneficial end user.
Let me ask you a two-pronged question, Kurt. First of all, how does it impact our energy or fuel imports, A? And B, what's the significance of this for any aspect of the energy sector per se?
Okay, right now all the landfill recovery projects across the United States are saving this country about 24 million barrels of oil a year. So we are making a dent in the imports from the Middle East, but it is just a small fraction of the energy demand. But I think we've seen enough news recently that says, you know, we need to be using this internal resource rather than relying on external sources. So this is a tremendous opportunity to keep harvesting this gas.
Well, thanks so much for your invaluable input. Now, Kevin, before we talk to Dave, explain cogeneration.
Cogeneration is an exciting technology. Dick Cheney's Energy Committee wholeheartedly recommended that cogeneration be applied throughout the country. Basically, the concept is that you take the waste heat from either generating electricity or the waste heat from generating heat and cooling and reapply it by powering a gas turbine that in itself could provide more electricity or heat or cooling. There's some wonderful applications for that. Colleges and universities, which tend to have both boilers and steam plants and, of course, a need for electricity.
Well, this is where Dave comes in. Dave, tell us how cogeneration works.
Well, just adding on what Kevin was saying, cogeneration, which is also known as combined heat and power, is the generation of electrical and thermal power from the same source of energy. Cogeneration is possible because in the process of generating electricity from fuel, heat is created as a byproduct. By harnessing that heat, you can use cogeneration to not only generate electricity, but you can use it for thermal applications such as steam, hot water, and heating. And then using a technology known as absorption chilling, you can actually take that heat, translate it into cold water, which can be used for refrigeration or other chilling processes.
What makes it such an efficient alternative?
When you take into account both the electrical and thermal energy from cogeneration, it's actually a more efficient way to produce energy than even the most modern large-scale power plants. Part of the reason is because cogeneration can create cooling and heating locally, something that's not practical for a large-scale power plant many miles away. Furthermore, because cogeneration can be on-site at a customer's premises, the line losses that are typically associated with transmitting that electricity over long distances are avoided. So for example, our company has microgens units, can convert about 80 to 90% of the energy in the fuel into useful power, which makes it very practical for many business applications.
Well, talk about some of those businesses. Which businesses or industries can best benefit from cogeneration?
Basically, any moderately sized business that has a heating or cooling need is a good candidate for cogeneration. Good examples are hospitals, hotels, resorts, commercial office buildings, manufacturing, grocery, food processing, high technology. Those are all good examples because they often have both electrical and thermal requirements, which is really key for cogeneration.
Right.
But we're seeing a wide range of potential applications, ranging from what Curtis was talking about in terms of using biogas as a potential fuel for cogeneration, to an interesting example that we've just started a project on for a shrimp farm, where we're actually using the cogeneration electricity for their pumps and the heat to raise the temperature in their farms, in their ponds, if you will, that actually allow them to grow larger shrimp more quickly.
That's where we have to leave it for this segment. Thank you, Kurt and David, for being here. Coming up, clean energy solutions and uranium mining. Next on Business First. Tighter environmental regulations are compounding the need for energy infrastructure development, as well as the need for new and alternative energy sources. Welcome back. Joining us now are executives from two companies that are taking energy provisions to new levels. Pat Murray. Pat is CEO and president of Dresser Inc., a company that was the catalyst for the existence of the natural gas industry and today is focused on energy infrastructure development. Jerry Grandy. Jerry is president of Cameco Corporation, one of the world's largest suppliers of uranium, harnessing nuclear power to address the need for clean, reliable, and cost-competitive electricity for America. Kevin, how is the lack of infrastructure development affecting the energy sector overall?
Jack, the state of the infrastructure has been debated since former Secretary Bill Richardson said we had the electrical grid of a third world nation. We also lack oil refining facilities, and now with gas coming online as the fuel of choice for all the new power plants, there's a potential for bottlenecks there too. At the same time, the country's been slow to adapt in its infrastructure energy-saving technologies. Altogether, it's quite an infrastructure problem.
Thanks, Kevin. Pat, let's start with you. Give us some insight from your perspective on what has caused this lack of investment in infrastructure over the last 20 years or so.
Well, it really goes back, Jack, to the 1970s. Significant investment took place during that decade, resulting in overcapacity throughout the 80s. Volatile oil and gas prices in the early 1990s resulted in lower cash flows for the oil and gas companies, again constraining investment. It began to pick up in the mid to late 90s, but then again oil and gas prices were down in 1998, 1999, resulted in a further stagnation. In addition to that, we're seeing in the last couple of years reduction in the amount of natural gas reserves available and increased demand throughout the world.
Can you talk about Dresser's role in the development of energy infrastructure and how it has evolved over the years?
Sure, Kevin. Actually, the name Dresser itself comes from Solomon Dresser, who in 1880 invented a coupling that allowed for sealing of gas delivery pipelines. That allowed the ability for gas to be delivered over hundreds of miles. Obviously, since that time, we've expanded and developed. Today, we design, manufacture, and market products associated with the energy industry in total. Last year, our revenues were about 85% related to the energy industry. 45% of the revenue was directly in natural gas. We manufacture products for flow control, for transmission pipes and pipelines, for natural gas metering, gas-fired engines for gas compression, as well as power generation, retail fuel dispensing systems, as well as local distribution regulation systems.
Pat, how are the new technologies changing your product offerings?
Well, probably the major change that's occurring, Kevin, is that we're beginning to apply information technology throughout our organization. For example, historically we've manufactured a valving system for either a process plant or a transmission line. Today, by the application of microprocessors or microelectronics, we're able to not only turn the valve on and off, but we're able to monitor how well it's performing and do predictive maintenance with that capability.
What about point-of-sale initiatives? How are you using technology to enhance the end-user experience?
Many of our most advanced systems now link directly to the internet, so that we're able to provide promotional material for the oil and gas company to the car, and we're also able to provide informational services, things such as MapQuest. In addition to that, we see a future where we'll be able to link directly into the vehicle itself to test things like tire pressure, fluid levels, and maintenance activity within the car. So we're able to provide direct response to the client as well as to the provider of the fuel.
Pat, let's stop there and let me turn to Kevin and ask another question. Kevin, why is nuclear energy considered a good alternative for clean energy?
Well, Kyoto and global warming have made us take a good hard look at what we breathe and what we're putting into the atmosphere. Most practical large-scale sources are found wanting in those regards. But nuclear emits almost no greenhouse gas. If you can get by the high capital cost, the operating cost is very low. The new nuclear designs are much safer than the old ones, and we're becoming much better at operating even those plants that are in place now.
Thanks, Kevin. Jerry Grandy, to follow up on that, 18 months ago, nuclear energy was not on most energy discussion radar screens, and maybe it was when Vice President Dick Cheney declared nuclear energy to be an imperative for the United States energy program. What do you think happened in between then and now?
Jack, I think it's a real interesting phenomenon. We've sort of alluded to it here. We all know that electricity demand is growing quite dramatically, certainly over the last 10 years. What hasn't been recognized is that nuclear power has generated about 20% of that electricity in this country for quite a long time. In some developed countries, it's in excess of 40%. That track record, that contribution has been made safely, it's been made cleanly, and very, very importantly, it's been done without any air pollution, including the greenhouse gas emissions that Kevin alluded to. It was those unique benefits and the track record that was talked about of low-cost electricity that caught the attention of Dick Cheney and other politicians in Washington, D.C.
Jerry, Cameco is the world's largest uranium supplier. Put that in perspective for us.
Jack, we supply about 20% of the Western world demand. And we've managed to achieve that market share because of some pretty extraordinary mining assets. These assets are large mines. They're extremely high grade. To put that in some perspective, the richness of the ore body is about 50 times better than our nearest competitor. These mines are located in the province of Saskatchewan. They're now in the second year of commercial production. One of them, McArthur River in particular, is truly extraordinary. It has the energy equivalent in a very, very small space of 2 million tons of coal or 8 billion barrels of oil.
Staggering. Cameco is based in Saskatchewan. What's your connection to the U.S. market?
We supply about 1/3 of the U.S. market. We do that as the largest producer of uranium in the United States. We operate mines in Nebraska and Wyoming, and those mines, coupled with our production out of Canada, makes us quite a supplier to the 103 nuclear operating plants that are in this country. Every one of them is a valued customer.
Jerry, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today, and you too, Pat, for your very important contribution. As globalization trends accelerate and energy consumption levels continue to grow, we have to make the best use of concepts for sustainable clean energy. Thanks to our guest today, and to all of you for watching. Join me next time for Business First, and I'm Jack Kemp.
This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.